Hey beautifuls, Hannah here from Reality Awareness. If you guys don't know me, I'm an intuitive healer and life purpose mentor, and Rapid Ascension Awakening is here. If you haven't checked that out, click on the link, it's just above me, and go and check that out. This actually downloaded to me in the past 48 hours. I've been a little bit of a cocoon because I have been downloading the Rapid Ascension Awakening, and it's pretty phenomenal if you ask me. Hey Kylie, I just have been going through, if you've been following me, been seeing like the big, restructure and change, and and then I've been working through these past lives that have been coming up, and when we go through our soul evolution, when you move through and you continually grow in your personal development and you work on yourself and you know that you're here for big things and you just keep moving through each step, then the next step gets shown to you. And I just come out of my Trusted Intuition tribe in there and been doing a live stream support group in there. And I shared with them, I was like, you know what, I realized last night, it was only last Friday that the 12th divine step got released in the divine in the life purpose mentorship, right? So the 12 divine steps to awakening your life purpose literally got released on Friday, and then hey Casey, and then the next only 5 days, it was actually Tuesday night, I got the downloads for the Rapid Ascension Awakening, and I've been downloading and putting all the information together for you guys. If you've seen it, the link's just above me, you can go and check it out. It's pretty freaking phenomenal. Anyway, the point I'm sharing is that the 12 divine steps, so the last course that I held for you guys, literally got released on Friday. So it was only 5 days later did the next download get shared, get given to me, right? And I'm sharing this because the biggest thing about people trusting their intuition and moving on to their life purpose is a big sense of they feel like they need to know the entire picture. Now, whilst you might have a vision and goals and a big understanding, you want it to be this way, but you don't know the steps to get there, it's so important that when you get that first bit of intuition, that you take the step and you put that into action, because then the next bit can come through. And sometimes we get that bit of intuition and you kind of go, okay, cool, well what about the next step, or what about how do I do that, or something. If you don't just when you get that bit of intuition, you're like, oh my god, and it brings you alive, and you do it, right? Then the next bit gets shown to you, then the next bit gets shown to you, right? And if you keep doing that, you will continue to move forward and you will attract all the resources you need to show you the next step. So it's really important that if you're getting that little bit of intuition about something, that you act on it, because when you actually act on it and you take action on it, so you're bringing it into your reality, you're doing it, then there's room energetically for the next bit to come through. So it's really important, otherwise we get backed up and then we get tired because we're energetically holding all this intuition back. Whereas if we just take action on it, then we allow the flow, and then we become energized, and we have all the energy and all the resources we need come into our reality to support us in awakening a life purpose, right? Hey Doreen, hey Katrina, some people, hey Dal, joining live, say hi. Hey Linda. So if you let me know, have you guys checked out the Rapid Ascension Awakening? Let me know if you guys have and what you thought about it. I want to know, comment below, let me know, because it was just so amazing. I'm like, oh. And when I get that flow, and I was just like, wow, got it. It's all time and space just kind of disappears, it just download it and it just comes through, and everything can wait. Everything can wait when that sort of happens. So, but yeah, as I was sharing in the group, I only realized, I think it was last night after I released it to you guys, gave birth on social media of the Rapid Ascension Awakening. Is so amazing. That energy is phenomenal. It was only last night after I pressed live, or sent it out to you guys, that literally I was like, wow, it was Friday that the 12th divine step got released. So it was the last bit of that course. And by the way, the 12 divine steps to awakening your life purpose is the 12 divine steps to awakening your life purpose. And the point I'm saying is after the 12th step, after it was released, and then only 5 days later, then I get the next step of what I'm here to do for you guys, right? So I guess I'm just sharing that if you get a bit of intuition about something, take action on it. because then you get the next step. Because if you don't, that's when we get tired or full of anxiety or anything, because we're just backing up and holding up this intuitive flow that wants to come through and support you, right? How are you guys feeling today? Let me know. If you haven't checked it out already, the Rapid Ascension Awakening, the link is above me. You can go and check it out. I want to know if somebody needs some help. Ask me a question. Somebody, there's people watching me live. Ask me a question. I know I helped some of you guys the other day too. I'm curious how you're going after that. You're feeling, okay, cool. Well, not cool, ultimately. But I ask you then, what are you putting off that you need to do? When you're feeling off, and when you're feeling tired, and when you're feeling angry or agitated, what are you doing that you are putting off? Like, what are you putting off that you know you need to do? And if you know you need to do something and you're not taking action on it because you're feeling scared, then it comes into a question around, why am I feeling fear about this? What is the reason that I feel fear about taking this action? Yeah? That's what I would be asking yourself. I just fully came out of the Trust Intuition group. Oh no, we got a low battery. And did a big live stream in there, which it was pretty cool because, you know, when you do these things and then you get confirmation, right, from spirit or from just everything, like, you know, I don't need confirmation because I trust that. Like, when that energy is so alive, you so know it's right. But coming out of like the Trust Intuition support that I did in there, like the questions that I got asked today confirms, like it wasn't until the end of the live stream, I know some of you guys were in there, the very end of the live stream, I'm like, oh, that's why, you know, like I just answer the questions. That's what I do. I support you guys. But it was like at the end of the live stream, it's like all the pieces of the puzzle came together. I'm like, oh, that's what Rapid Ascension Awakening is, like to support the planet in healing themselves, right? It's like the missing kind of key on the planet right now. I'm not saying my way is the only way, but it's a pretty phenomenal way. Resistance to quitting smoking. It's a tough one. Has been causing anxiety for 2 years. Funnily enough, what we were speaking about in the Trust Intuition group was addictions, mainly about drug taking and the drugs that, you know, like what drugs actually, you know, what drugs actually do to your body, like marijuana or LSD or speed or cocaine, like what it's actually literally doing to your body. And then we got into a discussion around alcohol and, you know, any sort of drug, like literally it's a poison, like you're literally putting a chemical into your body. Even alcohol is a poison. So, you know, like ultimately your body dies. And, you know, and then as you know, is saying you're feeling resistance to quitting smoking, it's a tough one. So it's like any addiction. And, you know, when we're speaking about the drugs, it's like the drugs. So for example, for marijuana, it's like you smoke marijuana and what it actually does, people were like, oh, cool, like all my problems go away, I'll feel better or whatever, right? Or it's a relaxant or whatever. And like I used to smoke from 13 to 21, so I know. But what it actually does is like, oh, it's not hydro, so it's not harmful, whatever. And I know they're using it for medical and stuff like that. But what it actually does on a metaphysical level is when you smoke marijuana, it you know, we've got an aura. Okay, so we've got our energetic bodies and aura, and inside our aura is different layers of our aura. So there's different sheaths, if you call them, like different layers in your aura that make up your aura, like your bubble around you, right? Your energetic bubble. And in that sense, it's like when you smoke marijuana, for instance, and different drugs are different things, but when you smoke marijuana, for instance, what happens is that, especially in your astral body, all the kind of core woundings or your like the, you know, your issues, your emotional issues that are sitting in your aura, they disappear from your body. Like they soften, they release, they relax from your aura. So they kind of, your aura softens away from your body and you're like, oh, right. But when the marijuana wears off, then it all comes back, and that's why we're stressed and we're like, it's all sitting here, right? And that's why we need it again, because then it loosens it away. But it doesn't actually solve the problem. It actually just moves it away from your body for a time, and then when it wears off, it comes back. So it's like still a Band-Aid, right? So, you know, and this is what I was saying in Trust Intuition, my tribe in there is like, you know, you guys have got the tools to actually deal with these issues so that you actually heal it for good rather than it going through this cycle all the time, right? And I'm sharing that because like the core of when you're saying, you know, it releases the, like you got anxiety from it, like causing anxiety for 2 years because you know it's bad for you, you need to quit and all that sort of thing, but you, like how sort of thing, like at its core of, like with addictions and that, it's covering up something, right? We all know addictions cover up something, yeah? It's something that is uncomfortable and we don't, so we put an addiction on it. Now, usually we're trying to fill a hole that can't be filled by anything but spirit, soul, all that sort of thing, right? So when we look at what's underneath, like it's an abandonment of some sort in some way, shape or form from somewhere along our lifetime, from childhood or something, when, for example, like mum was late picking us up for school and there was no one else there. That's my stuff. You know, it's like I felt abandoned, right? And even though it's not like a true abandonment, I mean, she just was late. But for me as a tiny child, it was like an abandonment sense, right? So, and this is just one tiny instance, right? And this is just what's coming to mind to give you an example. So I've got a sense of abandonment. Now, when I got in the car, I was really upset. I remember, and mum's like, oh, sorry. And I'm like, all I wanted was a cuddle. Just give me a fucking cuddle, right? But I didn't know that as a child. Anyway, so the point that I'm saying is that all I needed was some love and some safety. Now, because I didn't get that, especially in that moment in time, I've carried that sense of anxiety or like abandonment. Like, are they coming? I'm going to get left behind. Like, what's happened? Like, especially as a child, as a family, like it's the worst, I can't think what the terminology is, but it's the worst cutting off sort of energy to be abandoned from your family, like kicked out of the tribe. Like, you know, if you think from reptilian brain style that hasn't disappeared, it's like, you know, getting kicked out of your tribe would mean that the saber-toothed tiger is going to eat you because there's safety in your tribe, right? So, hey, Carrie. So, okay, so with that, say, addiction and what you're saying with the anxiety and like, you know, you need to quit smoking, but it's hard, you know, or whatever, you know, so it's causing anxiety because you know it's worse, blah, blah, blah. So what you need to be asking yourself and looking at is, like, what is your smoking covering up? Like, and this goes for any addiction. What is my addiction covering up? What am I not wanting to face? What's uncomfortable for me that then this addiction gives me comfort, right? So for me, my food addiction, as I've just been discovering, and my relationship addiction, if you've been following me for the past couple of months, has been an unraveling of me just wanting to be loved, right? And not feeling loved. And then when somebody is in front of me loving me, I don't let it in, right? So it's really about looking at the core woundings underneath of what's smoking covering up. Now, smoking might be covering up something that's out of alignment in your life. So any addiction is also an out of alignment. In case something is out of alignment in your life, that you're not living like your life purpose, like you're not in full alignment, you know, if you're not happy, if you're depressed most of the time, something's out of alignment, right? Then we take these drugs, or we have addictions of whatever sense, shape or form that, you know, will like kind of calm that for a minute. But then, as I said, like the marijuana, for example, it just loosens it for a minute and then it all comes back. Okay, so we're not actually dealing with the problem. So when we like look at, you know, if you really want to quit smoking, for example, like there's, you know, and this is what I was also showing in the group, there's different ways to do that, right? There's different, there's all different support systems, and I encourage you to use them all, right? Whether it's patches or whether there's some sort of, you know, physical help to get off the nicotine physical withdrawals. And then you can also at the same time be getting counseling support from, you know, your doctor and psychologist. And then you can also be doing the spiritual support. Any addiction needs to be bringing in all of the resources. Like there's, you know, it's the same thing what I was sharing in the Trust Intuition group too. It's like, you know, to do physical healing. Like if somebody comes to me with a physical problem and want to heal it spiritually, the first thing I say to them is, are you receiving medical treatment? Okay, because as I always say, if I had a car accident, I would want the ambulance to take me to the hospital. You know, several hundred years ago, the medical system wasn't as advanced as it is today. And there's a reason that it is advanced, okay? If you have a big, tumor or something like that, like depending on how far along you are, like go to the doctor. Like the system is there for a reason, and then you can work on the spiritual source so it doesn't come back. So when you're working with, say, releasing smoking, for example, like I said, like pull in all the resources so that you can really work on, like everything is here for a reason, right? It's like everything is here. Like when we start cutting out things because it's like, ooh, don't want to touch that because that's bad. Like I'll never go to the medical doctor, but I'll just do the spiritual stuff. But then your physical body's really needing the physical support. It's like, come on, like, do you know what I mean? Like all the thing. Okay, so let me just check these questions. Okay, Doreen, when you said, what do you think my next step should be? I ask you, what do you think it should be? I'm not here to tell you your life purpose. I'm here to give you the tools to help uncover what your unique life purpose is. Carrie says, yes, that's me. Relationships, afraid of abandonment. And then when love is there, I would push it away. Yes, I've been working deeply on that. Well, so much so, that's what I said. I shifted, and then last year I'm like, oh, I actually can let it in. And then, all that other stuff happened. Okay, smoking is the last to go. Quick booze and prescription addiction to Valium. Yeah, so awesome. One addiction at a time. Perfect. Perfect. One thing at a time. Yeah. Linda, I sit and have the conversations with myself, but I've not been getting still enough to listen. Yeah, there's probably too much chaos there, too much pain, and that's where we need like a mentor support. That's what I do, with my clients, is just like literally help to get the emotions out and the feelings and make sense of them all, because we can meditate and it's just the same as like we can move forward in our life purpose, but then stuff comes up because we're moving forward and our vibration is shifting, and what's not in alignment needs to come up and out. And that's when you need the mental support, the tools, the support to be able to actually literally shift that out, so then you can keep rising, right? So then you can get still, right? But stuff will come up because it's needing to be heard. And then there's the stillness again. It's like the waves come in, like I say, and then they recede back out, and it's like the tide comes in and the tide comes out, right? Just got to learn to ride them with the tools. My partner would say, you are waiting for me to abandon you. Yeah. How much am I going to push them away, right? So yeah. And yeah, of course, Linda can definitely help in, book in for sure. To send me a message, I can send you the details with that. Yeah, so one addiction at a time is the best. But like I said, like when you're going to be quitting an addiction, it's important to like pull in all resources because they're there for a reason. Like use them. Yeah, use them all. And that's the thing. It's like we're physical, and then we've got emotions, and then we've got mental, and then we've got spiritual. And in our reality, in our world today, there are resources for all of those. Use them all, because then you're using and healing on a whole level rather than just a physical, like, yeah, I just need to take a nicotine patch or whatever, right? And that's just not going to work if you just use the one thing. It's like, no, well, that's going to support your physical body. Now, what are you doing for your spiritual? What are you doing for your emotional? And what are you doing for your mental, right? Use them all. Pull in all resources. Yes, 100%, 100%. What practices do I do to raise my vibration? A lot. a lot. Definitely, like there's yoga, meditation, journaling, like on a daily basis. And then, just the thought, trains the thought and becoming aware of that. But, like to physically raise the vibration is to do the core wounding work, past life healing, like all that sort of thing. Like there's only a certain amount of meditating and stuff we can do before, like as I share, like you can sit still, or you can move forward in your life purpose, and you can be doing all these practices, yes, and then stuff comes up, and it's important to have the tools and the resources, especially for past life woundings, especially for the spiritual woundings, because they sit in our aura that are traveled over from past lives, that are traveled over from childhood. If you don't have the spiritual tools and resources, which is what I teach in my Trust and Intuition, is like to actually remove that from your aura and in a healed perspective way, getting to the core space and healing that, then it's not sitting in your energetic field, and then your vibration rises. Does that make sense? So it's the same thing as like when I said, if people smoke weed and they, like it relaxes, so like they're feeling stressed, or it's just like, a pattern of how they relax. Then they smoke the weed, so it relaxes all the stuff out of their aura, but it's still there. It just moves away from their body. So then when then it wears off, then it's all here again and in their face. Whereas the tools that I teach in Trusted Intuition actually help to remove that from your aura in a healed perspective way, at the core wounding of it, including past lives and more, that it's not there anymore. So if we think about all these things sitting in our aura, in our emotional body, in our astral body, they're keeping our vibration at a lower space, at a denser, space. So when you actually do the core wounding work, and that's why when, like when they say like on marijuana, like they smoke in it and you get high, right? Because it moves away from your aura. So you're like high, you're lighter, right? And then it hits, reality hits back in, right? Which is all the stuff, right? Where I give you the tools to remove that. So this becomes your normal. Hello. So people are like, wow, you're glowing today, or you look very vibrant. It's like, yeah, because I didn't have the stuff in my aura. I've still got stuff, but not as much. Not as much, right? Yeah, awesome, Dal. Yesterday I went all in and totally gutted out my bedroom. Yes! Slowly, very slowly, adding things back that I truly want in my life. Oh, I'm so proud of you. I love that, Casey. I love hearing that. Oh, it makes such a big shift. Figuring out what's really important and adds value to it with a lot less stuff in my room. Oh my God, I love that. Energy shifting out, so important. And really looking at your home space and what clutter you've got around you is a real big step in your first awareness to awakening and moving the stuff. It's sort of saying, like, like a physical body, our physical reality is important. Decluttering, you start to become aware of what you're carrying, what you're not, on a real physical perspective. And then you can start actually releasing that from your aura as well, right? It's like, what are you carrying physically? And then what are you carrying energetically, yeah? And if there's stuff you don't want to get rid of when you're decluttering, really important tip here, I'm just sharing for some reason, and you're like, oh, I don't want to, people are like, oh, I've got to declutter and I've got to get rid of things, but I've got such emotional attachment to it. And I say to them, don't get rid of it, right? It's more pain and trauma getting rid of something that you don't want to get rid of, but people telling you, oh, you need to declutter and get rid of everything. I say, keep it because you love it. Okay, or it's special and important to you. I say, well, damn, we'll keep it, right? Because what happens is when you do the work, like, your spiritual development work, and you go along and you heal all your emotional issues, or you move through them or whatever, eventually it gets to a point you're like, oh, I don't need this anymore. Like, I feel like I can let go. And you do it with love, right? What is the Kundalini energy, the difference in energy? I'll spit to that in a second. I just saw, Hannah, I saw this interview the other day with this healer who talked about what you have said about when we raise our frequency, we will have more clearing again. Yes. And this brings us to the depths, darker places again. It's constant cleansing is all I can see there. Yeah. And it's not that it just, it's not that it brings us to the depths again. It's just like, it's literally like cleaning out the cupboard, right? Like I say, it's literally like, okay, cool. Well, that cupboard's normal. And then all of a sudden you shift and you go, fuck, I need to clean that cupboard out. And you're like, how come I've still got this stuff in here? Like, how did I forget that I had this stuff in here? And that's just this darkness stuff coming up, right? If you want to call it that, this stuff coming up that you're like, fuck, how come I've been carrying this all this time? And you become aware of it. And then you go, oh, yeah, I don't need this anymore. And so you clean the cupboard out and then you go, oh, that's better. And you put the stuff back in the cupboard. Does that make sense? in a easier way to understand? Like, but that's what happens spiritually in our spiritual energetic senses, right? As well, yeah? So the Kundalini energy, the specific name Kundalini energy, usually does refer to the, the crossover. So it's like the snake that stems from our base chakra. And it is literally like like the two, the Kundalini symbol. It's like that the two snakes, like, what am I saying? Like intertwining together. And it stems usually from your base chakra. I'm trying to point all the way down, all the way through the center of your being and all the way up through your crown. So it's not a spiral, it's literally like an intertwining, and, you know, specifically that can be activated through many different means. There's so many techniques out there, and, you know, in the Rapid Ascension Awakening, there's definitely Kundalini Awakening going in there, because ultimately at the end of the day, like, and as I teach with the chakras and all my teachings, it's kind of like, this is what I'm sharing with you because I'm giving you a seed or a spark or a tool to help you awaken. If you go into yourself and you're like, but my chakra is not like that, I want you to trust what your chakra or what your energy or what your intuition is telling you about what you're picking up and what your senses are over what I'm sharing. Because at the end of the day, every single thing that ever is on this planet, never has been and never will be, first came from a thought. First came from somebody's thought that actually put that intuition and into action to create it in the physical world, and then somebody's learned about it and somebody's learned about it and somebody's learned about it, right? So when you actually, you know, look at it from that perspective, it's like, okay, cool, Kundalini is like, yeah, the two intertwining snakes, usually masculine and feminine in balance from the base chakra all the way up and out if you want, and then coming into that, is it called the Taurus? I always forget that Taurus of energy, right? And to have that, all your chakras need to be awakened, activated, healed, repaired, and then the connection in between your chakras also needs to be functioning correctly for that complete energy flow to be flowing, right? He was coming from a deep trauma healing. So he referenced the darker places in cleansing energy. He'll kill people in the military in Afghanistan. So that's like a lot of like trauma obviously carrying there for sure. You know, and in reference to, he was coming from deep trauma healing. Yeah, so Kundalini, like, and this is the thing, right? So like any trauma, any little bit of abandonment from, you know, like the example that I already gave on here, sits in our aura, in our energetic field, and it sits there as a heavy energy, as a dark energy. And when we start becoming aware and moving through and awakening through our practices, then that becomes, you know, like, as I always say, like, it's the same thing. Our vibration starts rising, and because this isn't the same vibration as our body anymore, it comes into our consciousness, right? The iceberg starts melting and comes up to the surface as water, and if we don't, you know, look at that, well, then it will sit there and, I don't know, go moldy. Does water go moldy? An iceberg? No. Do you know what I'm saying though? But then we can actually work that, and it actually returns back into the wholeness of consciousness, into the wholeness of the water, the iceberg that's come up to the surface, and then returns back to the wholeness. So yeah, and when we, you know, as I share and trust intuition, you know, like when we actually go through, and as you've experienced, Carrie, you're like, oh, I was so scared of it, and now actually gone through it, it's actually not that bad. It's not as bad as what I made it out to be, right? So we think, you know, when we actually think from somebody who's, I guess, not awake or not conscious, like, you know, darkness or dark forces or witches or anything like that, it has I guess a negative connotation on it. If you think back to like only 200 years ago, people like me were still being, people like us were still being burnt at the stake for having a knowledge of like, oh, let's pick this herb and make this tea to stop a stomach upset, right? Just because of the strong religion forces that were like the government almost, like in that sort of a power sense, that anything out of the norm or anyone who didn't, you know, adhere to the religious rules were seen as, you know, that sort of an outcast, or that, what is it called, that, you know, there was such a big dogma and stigma around it that collective is still really strong in today's reality, yeah? It's making so much sense. Yay! I'm glad. Yeah. So always remember, you know, when you do any sort of healing, and that's why I teach that and trust intuition with the past life stuff, like, and I've shared with my blogs, if you've been following me recently, you know, like, it's so important that when you start uncovering this sort of stuff and you ask, well, where did this come from? Where did this stem from? And you, so integration, shadow integration. Yeah, so I mean, like integrating the dark to light, like any sort of healing is integration. Like if you look at the iceberg scenario, when that bottom of the iceberg comes up to the surface for your awareness, you become aware of the trauma, the dark, you know, whatever the darkness is, like the trauma, and you start working on it. Integration could mean that you've healed it and it goes back into the water of the whole of the ocean, right? So integration is another word for healing. Integration is that, you know, owning and healing it, working through it, the reflection. So what was I going to say there? I got sidetracked, but maybe I've said what I've said. Yay, I'm so glad it's making sense, Amy. And for everybody else, I hope that that's helped you as well. I know my battery's getting lower and lower,